Hi, this is Brendan Crosdale, and welcome to the LAN party. I'm here today with Andrew Nelson.
Hello.
The only crow in his murder, Mike McLaughlin.
How's it going, guys?
And the infamous James Lowry.
Hello out there in podcast land.
We're here on the second episode of the LAN party today, and we're going to talk about a less specific topic than just Destiny. Today we're talking about our roots in gaming. Gaming is a pretty important hobby to each of us. It's something that's been with me my whole life. It's difficult to explain to people who aren't as much into it, but I think that it's become quite easier as time has gone on and gaming's gotten a little more mainstream, nerd culture and things like that. But I always think it's fun to look back at the games we played and the games that we remember as being seminal. And I have a lot of games in my past that actually, they ended up becoming like almost life lessons and things. They're things that I carried with me and I always reference and I think about. And a lot of them become larger than life. I remember a lot of games probably better than they were. And they matter to me a whole lot more than they probably matter in the grand scheme of games.
So you're saying you're basically the Republican nightmare?
Yeah, 100%.
I learned my entire life on video games.
Yeah, when I talk about the SNES,
Witchcraft?
I'm basically Glenn Beck. But yeah, we'll talk about our gaming roots. I think, oh man, when I think about getting into games and gaming for me, it's kind of weird because I didn't start out actually, I guess, as a hardcore gamer. I had friends who had a lot more video games and went to arcades and things like that. The first memories I have are always like borrowed systems or games. I remember playing with an NES system that my friend Elia Natsis had in like his dad's pizzeria, and that was the first time I ever played Mario.
Sounds
Brothers.
like a fake name.
It was real. It was real. Yeah, a real place. Lou Nassis's Pizza. I think it's still there, Meredith, New Hampshire. But yeah, I played my first NES games there. There was Legend of Zelda and Mario and Rad Racer, a bunch of these weird games like that. And then the first system I ever owned was actually a SNES. And I remember I got that with a bundled package with Mario Kart and this crappy third-party controller that didn't work. But from there on out, like that point on in my life, I can't think of a time after that that I don't associate with a game I played then. And that carries with me like through life events and everything else. There's all these games that I remember from my past, and I had trouble remembering a lot of the things from like when I was a kid. I don't have crystal clear memory going back. But if I think about the games, it's almost like thinking about like a song or something. Like I instantly can remember where I was, what I was doing, what my life was like when that game came out.
It's kind of like early gaming on PCs for me. Like it reminds me of a specific room in an old house.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I mean, my mom had this one Macintosh, and I remember sitting down when we had moved out of Blue Hill and we were in Cape Elizabeth, and we had, was it Rebel Alliance or Rebel Starfighter? It was and I always remember that she was staying in the house's garage apartment while her house was getting renovated, and we had to heat the place with this turbine engine of a kerosene heater, so everything smelled like kerosene, and so that's all mixed up in my memory.
That kind of explains a lot about you, James.
Childhood filled with kerosene and video games.
I'm gonna have to cut this podcast short, you guys. I need a huff.
I was born in fire.
Yeah, for those of you who don't live in New England, kerosene. You're familiar with it as a child. We don't properly heat our homes here. It's a sign of shame to believe it's cold outside, no matter how cold.
That's super true. We're in the balls of winter right now.
Yes.
We really, that's actually when I started playing video games. And
In the winter?
Yes, in the winter. I know this specifically. This is my earliest memory, which is kind of sad. No,
it's not.
This is
It's great.
amazing.
It's awesome.
It really fits perfectly here because I was 3 years old. And this is the only memory I have as a 3-year-old. I'm certain. There's nothing that could fit in there. But it was the dead of winter, and my dad brought home an NES with the Duck Hunt Mario combo.
Trying to win your love at 3 years old.
And failing. And he set it up on the TV, and he started playing. I think it was more for him, but he passed off for the kids. But he ran us all through Return, and I remember being terrified of Duck Hunt. Horrified. I think it was the laughing dog. I haven't played the new Super Smash game.
Didn't you guys go actually hunting, though?
Yeah. Oh, obviously. This was Northern Maine. Yeah. What else were we going to do?
Terrified of duck hunt. I'll just go kill some animals.
No dogs laughed at me in the wild. I was never shamed by a cartoon dog in 8-bit in the wild.
Were you a Stark?
Oh my
Might as well have been.
Yeah.
If we had more land and money, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
We had neither, but the only reason I can remember what that room looks like is because of that distinct memory of that winter night when it's cold as hell. And I'm sitting there in my pajamas, and I'm not even supposed to be up this late. It was like one of those rare occasions where we're like, no, late bedtime tonight, special event. Dad brought home a gaming console, and I didn't even know what that was. Like, I'd heard of arcades, and I'd presumably seen video games, but it was just beyond me. And he sets down the Nintendo NES, and from that moment, it was the truest love I've ever had in my life. Since I was 3 years old, man.
Truer than your love for your parents. The silence is really, really deafening right now.
Yeah, I mean, God, I remember. So
Your mother's gonna hear this, you know.
I remember
I really hope not. I love you, Mom.
I remember the SNES system that we got. It was the second time I'd seen the Super Nintendo. I had an Uncle Wayne at the time.
Bruce?
No,
Oh, okay.
Wayne was his first name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if my uncle was Bruce Wayne, whoa, that would make me like what, Damian Wayne's brother. I can't imagine how fucked up that kid must be.
Well, to be fair, you wouldn't have student loan debt either.
That's true.
So it's a trade.
That would be
Shit.
better. Yeah. I mean, well, either way, I'm not. My Uncle Wayne had the SNES system. He had A Link to the Past. That was like the one that he had. I remember playing Zelda, which would eventually become this like super important game to me. And I just remember like being totally enthralled by it. Like prior to that, the NES and all these other things, they were cool because I played them at a friend's house, but they weren't any different than like playing a board game with my friends or going out in the woods and pretending to be Army Men or like something like that. It was just another thing I did. But The Legend of Zelda, it like grabbed me in this way. Like it just reached out. I was like, oh my God, I'm this hero. I have a mission. There's something to do. And I remember like desperately wanting the game system. And then that Christmas, I was one of those kids who ripped open the gigantic box under the tree, and there it was. It was the SNES Master System with everything else we got with it.
Oh my God!
Oh yeah, I was like screaming. I remember it too. I had a bunch of Ghostbusters toys and things that I got.
Threw them in the trash.
Yeah, they were like the coolest thing in the world for the first 20 minutes of Christmas, and then
Then you got the big present at the end, and you just...
I was done with that. And I just remember like playing the crap out of those games and being terrible, because at that point like I didn't have any of those skills, and it was like you had to like just force yourself to build a new skill set. And I remember vividly being so bad at Mario Kart that like I was developing like a young kid gamer rage. Like I was like, why does Koopa Troopa always beat me? Like why is it gonna be this way? I try and jump and then I just fly off the track and Lakitu's always picking me up. I feel like a failure. Like just getting really mad. And then like I was starting to discover that learning curve. Like I have to play it up and I have to keep doing this thing. And I had learned quicker than my brother. So then the second lesson of this game was like, oh, if I'm better, I can victimize another. My knowledge I can beat my brother who's physically larger than me in the game. He'll beat me later, but I'll win first.
I ended up being a little bit of a young cheater. Now this is making me realize just how old I am, because I realized that the first games that I ever played, the first video games that I ever played, were on my dad's Mac 2E. I mean, this was like a progenitor Mac computer. It, it didn't even have like a hard drive. It just had two floppy drives that sat there and kind of squawked and
which floppy drives? The giant floppy drives, or the second gen floppy drives?
That was the thing, is you had two of the hard disk, as it was known back then. I don't know why people started calling them floppy disks, because you're like, no, it's actually hard.
Yeah.
And then there was the other drive, which was the actual real floppy disk.
Old school.
Just a.
I'm glad I wasn't alive during this time.
Just a magnetic circle.
In the days when the kerosene lamps and kerosene heaters and a Mac with a little apple on the side, and we'd hand crank it up.
And I didn't realize that the first game that I had played wasn't actually a game. It was a literal kind of setup wizard thing, and you sat there and you took this character through all the setup of the computer. And I was heartbroken.
Dude. I'm so sorry.
I was heartbroken at the end because they said that it wasn't a game, and I really wanted to play it again.
They said that you were having network difficulties at the end.
But so one of the games that was there was this world event, or it was this old polygon kind of Olympic events kind of thing. And you got to
yeah.
play caber toss, which was amazing, and log rolling and skiing and cliff diving. Oh, the cliff diving was hilarious because you could never do it right and you'd end up bouncing off the cliff. And but the thing was that so my cousins came by and one of them beat me at the skiing game. And I thought that this was kind of unacceptable. But the thing was that my dad had taught me how the controller worked. And it had these two little tabs, or I'm not exactly sort of slider selectors, that set the axis off to a direction. So you could sit there and tell it to add +3 left to the x-axis.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And so it would naturally pull in that direction.
So it's kind of like you're skiing on a tank.
That has one wheel busted and is pulling to the right. And so my cousin won, and I sat there, and I didn't do as well as him, and as my hands left the controller, they just made sure those things slid a little off to the sides. And then I kept on winning. And,
That's good.
I think my first game was actually, and I know we've been going back and forth on this with Sega versus
Yeah.
Nintendo. And
For those of you in the audience, we want you to know that before we went on air today, we totally ruined all of our content by already hashing out this huge war.
Okay,
of
so
Nintendo versus Sega.
this is what happened. Basically, the internet will understand this, and they'll
console
understand
wars
how
are
alone
alive
I
and
am.
well.
The other 3 gentlemen on this podcast, for whatever reason, did not have parents who loved them. And so one Christmas, they decided, hey, all them kids love the video games. We should get one. And when they got into KB Toys, rather than buying a Nintendo like everyone else in America, they said, no, let's get them the Sega Master System. And so these guys get screwed out of an early education in video games. It's terrible. It's awful that it happened to them. I feel for you. But, I mean, just let me know what it was like. I can't imagine a world without video games for that long. What was it like to force your way through?
I honestly don't know what you're talking about. I really loved the skiing game on my computer. where the Yeti comes out and eats you randomly and you have no control over it.
Is that a real game? There was a
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You never played that game?
No.
The first games that I actually remember playing were the bullshit games, like the pinball and the Minesweeper games for Windows PCs.
Oh, wow.
Those are the first games that I remember.
Right.
I did have Genesis that I was given secondhand from my cousins.
Yeah. Well, what year were you born in?
1990.
It's a whole man. Okay, yeah. So you didn't have a shot at things like
Right.
so.
Yeah. So my first gaming system, I know because I've been told this, was an NES.
Right.
That was the first game system that I had. I wasn't old enough to play it. I probably couldn't see shapes when we had it. And then we moved to a Genesis, but before that was PC, and I was just playing all these crappy games.
Yeah.
Got Genesis, hooked on Sonic, sucked at Sonic. But really, my favorite game, and like the best one that I remember in my childhood, was X-Men Clone War.
X-Men Clone War.
X-Men Clone War. Straight up one of my favorite side-scrolling video games ever, because you got to play as all the X-Men. Nightcrawler was in it, which was awesome. You could just blink around the map. But the best part for me is that they had it at and this is sort of goes in line with the cheating and the learning curve, is they had it at the summer daycare thing at the school that I went to.
Yeah.
So during the summer, I got to go there and play video games with friends.
That's right.
It was awesome. But I also had it at home, so I knew all the tricks of how to beat the game faster. And the rule was that once you lost or you died and you had to restart, you had to get off the console so somebody else could play. But because I played it at home and I was good enough, I never got kicked off the console, and I just kept playing.
Riding that corner.
Yeah, riding that corner.
Yeah.
But the best part is that you could, and nobody else knew this, you could just keep restarting the console when you put it in, because it does a cold start to a level. You could keep restarting the console to get a different character every time, because it would just cycle through the different characters. Yeah. So I would always go through and do Wolverine, because the first level was this Russian snowscape.
It was amazing.
It was awesome.
It's really one of the greatest gifts to platforming.
It honestly,
like, I know you love your Mario and all that, but until you are Wolverine platforming your way through Russia and fighting communists,
yeah,
you never lived.
Yeah, it's basically Magneto communists.
Well,
but you could use the claws to stick into walls and climb up walls and climb on the ceiling. because gravity.
Well, it's kind of a weird thing when you contrast those systems, thinking about like the Genesis versus by the SNES when you get to the 16-bit era, is when you see this really get extrapolated upon, because Nintendo had such strong first-party titles. They had made development for the system very expensive and hard. The NES, they had notoriously limited the number of releases you could have per year, so companies had to make shell companies to release other games, and producing carts on the Nintendo was massively expensive and hard for startups. So we didn't have a lot of third-party games to begin with, but we didn't really need them. And then on the Genesis, where they were like, please get us more games, you had all these third-party games. You had all the Disney platformers everybody remembers. You had
so good.
licensed games about Marvel and
Vector Man.
Well, that was like I remember this. He was like the green balls, basically, that like float around, and it was like faux 3D-ish.
It was amazing. It was probably the greatest game ever made. Yeah, the greatest game ever made.
Wow.
Vector Man for the Genesis. There you go, folks. Pack it in.
I don't.
Really,
Okay, well, our job is done here.
Let's go order a pizza. We're done, right?
Yeah, that was
Alright.
it. That was it.
You know,
Vector
I
Man.
think it's interesting that both you guys have brought up school or learning in some way like that, because it just occurred to me that that video games in the arcade helped me get over a learning disability. I had trouble reading as a kid, and I'd lag behind in the class, so I started getting outside tutoring. And this one lady was very smart. She worked on a reward system, and you get these little colored doodads, little discs, and every time that I read something or I went through an exercise, I would collect up to that, and she would go, okay, you can turn these in and start getting rewards. Now I'm starting to realize this is very much like what games do nowadays. But she finally asked, okay, we're gonna, you're learning really quickly, we're gonna run you through a whole bunch of stuff. What would be a great reward for you? And I didn't even hesitate. I was like, a trip out to Galactica. Galactica was our local arcade. And the thing was that eventually my parents figured out that they could get me to do anything if it would take me to the arcade. And the thing was that the one time that I went out there and I didn't want to leave, my mom was like, I don't like it when you behave like this. It makes me not want to bring you back. Guess who was a perfect little boy for the next couple of months?
Yeah.
That reminds me, real quick, that also reminds me of this system with little plastic discs. When I used to play video games for too much, my dad had this toy gun that would shoot plastic discs, so you just shoot them at me.
So different parenting styles here. Some parents are worried getting their kids tutors, others just shooting their children.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised I got a game console at all.
Wow.
And for those of you who are psychology majors, you understand that this is an example of operant conditioning, both negative and positive.
Guys,
Look at
you
Mr.
really have to
College
understand
over here.
From someone who's known Andrew since we were in middle school. I do remember this one time later on in our lives when we were playing World of Warcraft.
Oh, God.
And Andrew's mother was furious. What did you get, like a bad grade on your report card?
Probably.
It was some asinine kid thing, that really doesn't matter now in life. But she came to his room, accused him that he was addicted to World of Warcraft. Had been playing too much.
That was an accurate assessment.
And then demanded his card.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God,
which
yes.
Andrew it was like he'd been hit by a bus. He had no idea what the hell she was talking about.
What? Did you think there was like a card you slotted to play the game?
Because she always heard me talking about getting the card for the subscription.
Oh, she thought it was like
She
in a
assumed,
machine.
yes, it was something that he plugged into his computer to allow him to access the World of Warcraft.
Oh my God, that's great.
And she was going to rip it from his desktop so that he couldn't play that WoW anymore. Then she discovered parental restrictions.
Yeah, they did the
that they had
self-control.
those on WoW, and then I never ran an instance with Andrew again.
Wow.
During the week, at least.
Yeah.
And until I turned, 17.
Well,
yeah,
okay,
you can
so-
rebel.
Yeah, I'm a rebellious 17-year-old. I'm going to sit inside and play video games.
Yeah, so tracking back on arcades when you were a little kid, I lucked out in the lottery of places to live in the U.S. To have a good video game education when I was growing up, because my childhood was in Meredith, New Hampshire. And if anybody's ever been up there, it's a beautiful place. It's on Lake Winnipesaukee. It's a really nice place to go. But if you went up there, you wouldn't think, oh, this is a mecca of gaming. But Weirs Beach, which is the neighboring town, has a place called Fun Spot. And what Fun Spot actually is right now, at least as of last year, is the largest indoor arcade in the world.
Yeah, it's still there.
And it's amazing. They have machines, they have cabinet machines that go back to like the very beginning. They have them coming up from pinballs through, all these machines, the original Japanese ports, and then the Pac-Man craze and everything since. And the cool thing about it was that when I was a kid, we could go there and I could just get lost in these games forever. Like my parents were totally cool with loading up the minivan with me and 6 of my friends and going there and dropping, like, at the time, I think it was like only like $20 for a few hundred of the tokens they used.
Oh, it was a good time.
Yeah, and you could run around and play all these games, and I got to play like tons of games that I never would have. They predated my ability to play them, but they were here and really well preserved. I mean, I had records that I had on Galaga machines. I played the crap out of Pac-Man. I got to play cabinet units, like original ones for the Star Wars X-Wing adventure game and all these other things. They were amazing.
This is kind of interesting because you, Brendan, and James are from the older generation of gamers, where you went to the arcade to play cabinet arcade games.
Yeah. Well,
Whereas,
sort of. I mean, we're a little young for it, but
yeah,
like,
you're still a little
there.
young for it. The only time I ever remember going to the arcade with Michael, well, first of all, Michael grew up in fucking Shitville, Maine. Millinocket. There's one street.
You know, I realized something the other day is right down the street from my house was this little pond that we would go swimming. And, you know, on the other side of the pond there was nothing. And I was always like, well, you know, there has to be something beyond that. I looked it up on Google Maps a few weeks ago, and beyond that pond is the 100-mile wilderness.
Oh, wow.
That's an
So
actual
there
name
is
of something,
nothing
by the way.
until Canada after that pond.
Well, I'm sure there's something.
No.
No.
No, it's just not on the map. There's something.
There's something there.
That's where Dick
Indigenous
Cheney
peoples that
hides
have
the
never-
bodies.
Yeah. So kind of-
Well, okay, so Michael and I went to the arcade, which was the only one that I can think of was Dream Machine in the mall. So we would go there, but I don't know why we used to go there, because we would go there and we would play Counter-Strike, which we would play at home anyway.
Oh, but you go to the LAN at the mall. It was like with
Yeah.
PCs. Yeah.
Well, it was really nice because we'd go there and our parents wouldn't be around.
So we could
and
swear.
Drink a lot of soda, eat a ton of junk food, and we'd be like, they're not picking us up for 4 hours. We're
Let's go back
wild
to
and
McDonald's.
loose. We're 13. We can do whatever we want.
Oh, doctor.
Yeah.
13 and playing Counter-Strike. Yeah, there is an age gap here.
Yeah. What,
Well, I mean,
what-
it'd been out for years at that point. Yeah.
Okay, that brings me to a point that I wanted to ask about while we're talking about Counter-Strike. Half-Life. Now, you were saying earlier that Half-Life for you doesn't really count as this, like, root of gaming for you.
No, Half-Life for me is something that came along and changed the way I was playing games severely. Like, obviously, it was a big game.
What, because of the nature of the first-person shooting environment?
Sort of.
Or what was...
So I remember the release of Half-Life, at least from the perspective I had, where I was at the beginning of high school, basically, when that game was coming out. And I had been playing console gaming up until that point. And PC gaming, I had actually kind of left behind. I'd played games like a lot of DOS games. I played, Warlords when I was a little kid, and moved up into Warcraft and things like that eventually became available for Windows.
Like all the RTS games and...
Yeah, and I'd played a lot of XCOM. That was like a big part of my game was playing that. But since then I moved away from it, and I had been a console gamer, and obviously everybody who ever was near N64 played GoldenEye. And
Right. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
for me, I guess part of the reason why I've gotten more and more into gaming as it's gone on is because the thing I treasured the most about it was the social experience. I loved playing games with my friends. And not just multiplayer games. I liked beating single-player games with a friend, or like reading a strategy guide to help them get through something, or playing with them, or watching people play. And I loved competitive gaming. And GoldenEye was like that first game that came along. It was a party game that was really fun. It was highly competitive. It was this great shooter. And that started stealing everything towards that. Like, shooters basically started like cropping up all over the place. And when Half-Life dropped, it was a big deal because we were like, oh, this single-player campaign's really good. These are unprecedented, amazing graphics, like everything about it. But the game changer was Counter-Strike. That mod came out very shortly after the release. It's hard to explain because we had played a lot of Quake. I was LAN partying by then, I guess, is the preface to this. And we were playing a lot of Quake, a lot of Action Quake, which was a mod for that. That was good, but it was like this John Woo style leap around, shoot everybody things. And modding was a thing on Quake. But Counter-Strike was the beginning of, like, this game is separating people. Skill matters so much in this thing that if you want to stay on the top of the ladder, you have to, like, hone it. You have to practice it. And it became comparable.
This was all pre-Steam. Like, this is all like way
there's
pre.
no Steam client manager or anything. You're going to dark places on the internet to download EXEs. You're hoping don't connect you to a Russian child porn site or something. And you're installing skins off all these websites and things. And, like, I actually remember there was this is a total aside. I went to a skin site to get a bunch of the guns and reskins that I used in Counter-Strike.
Yeah.
It was like the CS Skin Shack.
I used to do
it had this like crappy flash animation when you went in there that had it was a Limp Bizkit song that it would say, rolling. This is what it is. Rolling. It would like start up every time you went there. And I remember like in the middle of the night, I'd be playing Counter-Strike and I'd have my headphones on or something so I wouldn't wake up my parents. And I'd take them off and set them down to like go get a snack and come back. And just those headphones turned like upwards into the air. I'd go to the Skin Shack to download something. Rolling. I'm like, damn it, no. But yeah, like it was a game changer for me.
All the modding and everything that came along with it in the community that sort of sprung up.
Yeah, like it was immediately I was like, okay, I gotta upgrade and have a computer that's just mine.
Yeah.
And no more family computer that I bring around all over the place. I need a computer that's mine. I need to have really good graphics. It needs to have headphones.
Yeah.
And that was like the beginning of a massive rabbit hole that didn't end until college.
Yeah,
like,
I think Half-Life was the game that got me to build my own computer for the first time. I had like the cool see-through chassis where you could see all the lights and the fans and everything.
Yeah.
It's actually interesting that you bring that up, that you kind of hit PC gaming late, because my family didn't have any family computer until I was 10 years old. I, outside of school, never used one. The only computer we'd ever had was my dad's work computer, and obviously I was not allowed to go anywhere near that.
Yeah, it was just full of porn.
Which is like, probably actually, but it's insane. It's insane for like to think about kids now who are completely 100% plugged into a computer, and I didn't get that joy and that excitement until I was 10. And I remember it was the very week we got it, my dad decided that, after only having like the chess game for a week to play, which I was super into, he decided to get us a real game, and he got us what is actually, I was wrong earlier, the greatest game ever made.
Oh no.
Vector Man's been
I know it's coming.
Baldur's Gate.
Oh, Baldur's Gate.
Oh yeah.
Here we go.
I knew. Alright. So Michael's gonna start in on Forgotten Realms. I'll be back in 20 minutes.
Let's buckle in, kids. Ari Salvatore ain't got shit on this. No, but seriously, Baldur's Gate has changed my life. It was the first time I'd ever been into PC gaming. As I said, we didn't have one. I didn't have access to that. And I picked up this game, and I was 10 years old, and it really was the needle of Dungeons & Dragons pushing deep, deep, deep into my veins and filling me with that sweet, sweet 20-sided drug. Because I realized, it said on the cover, all this TSR shit. I was like, what the hell's TSR? Couldn't really look it up back then, like rudiments of the internet. I didn't know how to use because I was a kid. I got connected to what was Dungeons & Dragons. And through the game, they had an interface where you could switch around a few settings, and suddenly it showed all the dice rolls. And I was like, well, what's this whole 1 to 20 thing? And that started me investigating for the next few years, what is Dungeons & Dragons and how do you play it, until one of my friends got a hand-me-down rule book from his older brother who didn't play anymore. And that was early in middle school. From that point on until now, it's completely controlled my life.
Yeah. And that's like weird is because I know this is going to hurt to hear, but like I really didn't like Baldur's Gate when it came out. It's not that I think it's a bad game. I know way better than that. That's amazing.
No, I'm glad that you can admit that you're wrong.
Yeah, sure. But I didn't like it, and the reason was because I'd already had, but when that game got released, I'd already started playing D&D. I was very fortunate. A friend Tim Lacasse, his older brother Mikey, had like sat us down in his mom's condo at one point and was like, "Yeah, we should play D&D." And so we got to I made my first character. He was a paladin. Tim made some kind of elven warrior of some kind, and we ran around killing Umber Hulks and doing the whole 9 yards. And that was really early. That was like when I was 10, 11 years old. And that just like it's nailed it for me. I was like, oh my god, you can do whatever you want in these games. This is like play pretend. This is great. All my friends, like that stuck with me through middle school and into high school, and like as everybody was getting away from toys and getting away from comics and all these other things, except for the few of us who stuck with it. It was like, man, this is still that chance to play around that mind space. And I got really excited when I was like, oh, there's all these D&D video games they made. They've been making them for years, obviously.
Yeah, not Eye of the Beholder. It was, it doesn't matter. Keep going.
Yeah, but they had released, Baldur's Gate came out, and all these people were like, oh, you gotta play this, it's just like D&D. And I sat down to play it, and of course it didn't have the freedom that I'd grown accustomed to. And I was like, I'm out of here.
Yeah,
and it sucks because I passed on that game, like straight up, and was like, no, I'm done with that.
Unfortunately, the video games were more limited than your imagination.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's a classic, amazingly well-crafted game, and it still holds up really well. The ISO re-releases they did.
But what it did for me is it for the first time in a video game, it brought me into a world where my choices mattered. where it impacted the game. Unfortunately, I didn't have the SNES, so I didn't actually play Chrono Trigger until after this event. But it was my first time with an RPG where I realized my character had alignment and they had reputation points. And if I went out and I got caught stealing from a store, suddenly I couldn't go back to that town in this game anymore because the guards wanted to kill me on sight.
Yeah.
I had messed up. Cops showed up. Oh no, accidentally killed one of them with a magic missile. Oh crap, I gotta bail it back to Baldur's Gate. We're never going to the sticks again. And it would impact the entire rest of the game because I have to dance around these zones.
Yeah.
So basically, you just screwed yourself in every city you went in.
I absolutely did. I learned a lot of very valuable life lessons. I would actually probably be in real jail if it wasn't for the fact that my Baldur's Gate
vandalism
character...
out in Baldur's Gate.
Exactly.
Taking it out on Red Wizards and...
What was the first
Scared Straight with Minsk.
Best show ever.
Oh my god.
What was the
I miss
first like, oh shit, I love this game moment for you? You know, like where you're playing it and you realize that that's the only thing that you want to be doing today.
Chrono Trigger.
Chrono Trigger?
Oh my god. I was getting Nintendo Power for weeks before that game came out, and like obviously I had the subscription forever, but they were coming out and you kept getting these previews of it. It was the first time like the hype train. Like I was like, oh, woo, 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 let's go! Like I seeing
Everyone
screenshots.
on the hype train.
Oh my god, I was so jazzed for it. I had built this game up to be something in my head that it delivered on. Like I fucking fell in love with Marla in that game. Like I had an emotional attachment with the princess in that game, and I was like this little child. Like Glenn's story was like getting to me in the fields. I was like, they turned this man into a frog. Now he's gonna be a frog forever. Like it was like this dark
He was
thing.
the best though.
Oh my god.
No party
Oh
is
my
complete
God.
without Frog.
Yeah, and like there was so much about that game. Like the whole time I was playing it, I was like, this is everything I want. Like it's so cool. It's really fun. The graphics are amazing. Like obviously now looking back, it's this seminal JRPG. It's like one of the probably the high points of Square's production house. But that even delivered as a kid. Like I didn't understand its context as a game in the industry, but I 110% understood how perfect a game that was while I was playing it. And I remember like it had all these features in it that just like set it aside from everything else it had, like New Game Plus. Like I could go back and replay the game and it wasn't a flat replay. I could replay with my own stats and gear that I had the last time. And like the fact that you could go through and play that again and that there were different avenues the story might take, because there were a series of different endings and there was all these unlocks you could miss and have to go back and get in different places and things. And then there were all the like character specific items you could get and everything. Like it had enough depth that at the time I'd hit it in that same stride to like be able to finally do that. Oh my god.
I'm gonna get every piece of loot in the game.
Oh yeah.
Going back to Baldur's Gate.
Oh my god.
They actually had that same feature, and I remember this was my not only my first experience with online gaming, but my first experience with cheesing the hell out of a game.
Oh, no.
Was they had a very rudimentary online cooperative multiplayer for Baldur's Gate. They also had a system where you could save characters and start the game over with them. And I got online, and I think you must have been at this point the only person on the internet playing this game, because who the hell else was? It was terrible to try to make this happen. And I could barely type, and I was just this little kid with chubby fingers trying to get around. But eventually he left the game, and then it gave me control of his character, and then it gave me the option to save his endgame character fully loaded out with gear and stats. So then I beat the game with somebody else's character.
More life advice. If you can't do it, find someone who can and steal their thunder.
You know, for a game that really catches you, I mean, it was weird because up until a certain point, I would notice that like gaming was fun because it was a way to just kind of turn off your head and still have the machinery be moving. And yet sometimes it was, and I've met a couple of people who they also said that this was the same thing, is that after a while, you know, the storyline of those early games were a lot of times really weak. Yeah. So you'd be sitting there and you'd be making up a story in your head as you went along and played the game. But in terms of the one that really got me, FF7. It's the only game that I ever stayed home from school to play. And I'm pretty sure is the reason I had to repeat Spanish that first time. Because when you were walking into class first thing in the morning, you weren't thinking about Spanish. You were thinking about how much further ahead Brian Decker was than you, and that he was going to sit there and you're going to beg him not to spoil anything.
Oh, yeah.
But since his mom was a substitute teacher, somehow he managed to do absolutely nothing and still have tons of time to play this game. And yeah, there's a fond memory of being sick and getting a gold chocobo.
I think for me, best sort of I'm in love with this game moment. Probably the story point at the very beginning of the original Half-Life, Unforeseen Consequences, when you bring the test thing into the chamber and you get just... I mean, it's, looking back on it, the graphics aren't great. It's kind of rudimentary now. Right. But at the time, when it just transports you to the alien world, the interloper world, and you see these aliens for the first time, and you're like, holy shit, I was not expecting this. I thought it was just like some like police shooter game when I first got it, because I got it as like this like hacked CD that somebody had like downloaded online and given to my family.
We're all owning up to doing a lot of cheating and breaking the rules and stealing things.
I did not buy a single video game until World of Warcraft for PC.
Really?
Straight up.
Wow.
Straight up.
Oh man,
yeah, that's intense.
Anything I did as a kid to earn money.
We have a pirate on our hands.
No, I'm not consoles. I bought the games, but for like PC, I didn't. My dad had a friend that would just like download the games, burn them to a CD, and give it to us. Cause
now you're implicating your own father. You're really just throwing everyone under the bus.
Statute of limitations, man. It was like 15 years ago.
Yeah, I also don't think Valve's coming after anybody for stealing Half-Life. Financially, that worked out for them.
Yeah, I think so. Best first-person shooter ever, apparently.
Yeah.
But the story, like being able to play this game where I'm actually like shocked by the story. I'm usually pretty good at guessing the next turn in a story. It kind of ruins a lot of stuff for me, for video games and life. But I was playing that game and I was just like completely taken aback and wasn't sure what to do from it. And then it immediately just shotguns you into this, you're under fire, everything's falling apart. It shows the entire progression of a hallway that you went down to get to this room completely changed, and everything is trying to kill you now.
Yeah, I mean, that was the shock value it created. The first of the haunted house shooters where you're just like running through what they've given you as the path, and the whole thing is just wrong the whole time.
Yeah.
There's always somebody coming to you and is like, go here next, do this thing. Oh my god, there's a tentacle coming through the wall.
Yeah.
This is on fire. Like,
or that triple-headed tentacle monster thing.
Yeah.
I probably spent 3 days. That was when like gamer rage started. Like the seed of gamer rage was planted. And I was just getting so angry at this game.
Wasn't Resident Evil at about the same time?
I don't know, that's way before. Resident Evil is a PS1 golden age.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of which of that generation of consoles did you have? PS1?
By then Or
did you have everything because your parents loved you?
I've been console agnostic for a very long time. Okay. The only thing I didn't own was a Genesis, actually out of spite. Even when I was a kid, I was like, no, I don't want that thing. There's nothing on it. And then by the time the SNES era was coming to an end, I had planned ahead. Like, I was like, Mom, I need the 64. I need the PlayStation.
I need it, Mom.
And I remember this kid, Jeremy Hartley, who I knew, had a PlayStation, and I would go over to his house and play it all the time, and I was like, man, we got to get this, because I didn't have one at launch. And even though, like, most basic games they had were so good that I was like, oh my god, I got to have this thing. And I remember, like, sitting my mom down and, like, trying to have, like, this really serious conversation with her, like, Mom, I need this thing. It's important to me as a human being. And like I tried to say something really serious, but like I'm like 12. So I'm probably like, Mom, seriously, all the kids have one. I've got to play Raiden Project, because if I don't, I won't know anything about Raiden Project when they talk about it at recess. I'm gonna look like an effing tool. And so like I don't know, they were convinced, and my parents were like so good. They got my brother and I like pretty much all the things we needed.
When I first started playing World of Warcraft, all of my friends had already started playing it. To get into playing the game, to get permission at this time, because I was 14 and I couldn't do what I wanted at that point. But to get permission, I had to prepare a PowerPoint presentation to my parents about why I should be allowed to get World of Warcraft.
I can validate. I know that this happened. This is a factual event.
I'm just gonna break our conversation for a second here so everybody can know. As someone who's from away, that is not born in Maine, most of the people I've met here from moving here had strange experiences as children that I don't understand. So if any of their stories seem weird to you, I'm there with you.
And that's when the moose stole all the jelly.
That's like every Maine story.
Oh man.
That's the thing about it too, is like, I remember having all these games, and kind of the deal with my parents was that if I could earn the money for the games, they would help me buy the system every time. So that made it a lot easier to stay on all of those consoles, and I played everything. I mean, I had a charmed childhood for a lot of reasons, but I got to play all these games. There's almost nothing that I missed. And it's awesome looking back, because that library of game skills, like, I get to play all these things that now are like seminal titles that influence things coming after them so heavily. And you can see it going back. It's weird now looking at generations of players, like even with you guys to an extent, who had to go back and play some of those things afterwards. Like, they returned to them to find them. And it's always funny to see which ones hold up and which ones don't. Like you mentioned Resident Evil, obviously massively important game. Classic, Golden Age PS1 game that was great.
But also terrible.
Yeah, it doesn't hold up at all.
So many aspects.
Broken
One
tank
of the
controls.
worst games ever made.
Yeah, it had all these like terrible loading problems, and it was bad, but it was super important, and we loved the hell out of it then. Like, that was like, oh my god, that was such a great game when it first came out. It was legitimately scary.
I actually never played it. I was too young.
Don't go back. Actually, they just released the Resident Evil remake that was on GameCube. They ported that to PS4. That came out, I think it's out this week. That's really good.
That's a great game.
Yeah, it's a solid game.
That's
Was that a rail shooter, or was it?
No, it's a room-to-room tank control-y.
Okay.
I guess in its core, it's an adventure game that also involved a degree of violence that you're inhibited from being good at. That's what made it
But it was
scary.
like a step better than the previous games.
Right.
Because instead of being impossible, it was plausible.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. But, yeah.
Well,
so
okay.
good.
So the reason I ask is, did everyone here have a PlayStation, or were you, Mike, were you an N64 kid?
I had a PlayStation, but my best friend had an N64.
So you got both?
Yes, because I would go to his house after school to hang out, and then back to my house. So I'd go to his house to play N64, and be like, all right,
Double dipping.
I'm going to go play my PlayStation now. I got some shit to do. Crash has got a Bandicoot.
Crash has got a Bandicoot, man.
That's what happens.
Did you play Ape Escape?
Of course.
Okay.
I did have a childhood.
Okay, I was just thinking back about the plot of this game and how ridiculous it is. You're basically this kid who's in the hospital and gets teleported to some random other planet where monkeys are being controlled by some machine
that puts funny hats on their heads.
Puts funny hats on their heads. And you have a special, like, electric net that you can catch them and free them.
To be fair, going to the N64 side, Pokemon Snap.
That was a weird
How the
game.
fuck does that work in real life?
Actually, that's interesting you bring that up.
Wait, are we talking about how games can work in real life?
You went to art school, and for a while you were in photography. Like, what the fuck's up with this shit, man?
It's a really dramatic depiction of nature photography. I mean, for sure, that's exactly... No. It's funny that you bring that up. I had put out a tweet today, and on Facebook, I'd asked people, what were some of your gaming memories. One of the ones I got was from Lisa Hepperzettel. She's a friend of Danny's.
Danny is Brennan's wife.
Yeah, she's my wife, and she's amazing. I love her so much. The only reason any of this is anywhere on the internet where you can find it is because she helped me. I am incompetent. But,
I mean, I had a hand in that too, but it was basically us behind the curtain making sure this happens.
Just let him suck up to his wife.
He already did.
She had messaged me about all these games that she had, and the last one on her list was, oh my god, Pokemon Snap, I love that game. And she sent it to me, and I kind of had to cringe when it saw, because I was like, Lisa, you had so many good games on this list. Why'd you have to bring up Pokemon Snap?
I'm not saying I didn't love that game.
Well, no, but it was such a weird game, and everyone owned it.
Oh,
I mean, everybody got that game, and they're like, what are you doing? And, you get it, and it was this, weird sense of disappointment. I know people love this game, and I'm going to get flamed at, but
it's like the Tom of MySpace for video games. Everybody has it, but everybody's confused as to where it came from.
Right, I remember just, sitting there playing it, and I was like, so you take the pictures? That's what this is way
Can
less.
you imagine
Yeah,
if
but you
were
gotta catch him in action.
If you were there at Game Freaks and they're like, holy crap, we made this one Game Boy game and now we are millionaires. Who's got the next great idea? Ooh, pick me! We're gonna make a game where you ride on a train and take pictures of Pikachu.
Right. Well, like, it's such a Japanese game, like, in its design.
Throw apples at him.
Yeah, you bake them out, you take the pictures, and, like, it was just a pure collection game. Like, now it would be a mobile game, but
Yeah.
They did that, like, so many times on the 64. They're like, we're gonna do Pokemon on the N64, and everybody got really excited. They're like, Pokemon Stadium. You plug your Game Boy into the thing. You're gonna buy another
Pokemon
cord.
Stadium at least made sense, though.
Sort
Sounds like a great game.
There's a point about the N64 that I think is very important to bring up, and that is that one N64 owner that everybody knew. He was that kid, you know, the guy who was a really good friend to have, unless he was just an asshole that day.
Oh yeah, the one that was really good at Super Smash Brothers.
And, you know, would sit there and be like, hey man, don't get angry. No, but the one I'm specifically talking about, and Matt, if you're listening to this, you know who the hell you are, and there's a place in hell for you.
Are you talking about Matt Sears?
No, not Matt Sears.
Because there's a place in hell for you too, Matt Sears.
Oh yes, there
Whoa.
is.
We're calling out a lot of people.
Actually,
that
he's
no
somebody I
one
want
else
to get
knows.
on this podcast because he's actually.
he's
That's
brilliant.
good. Well,
He's
we're
great.
basically the hell end of the internet right now. So.
But if you ever sat down and played GoldenEye and told your friends that they had to play with grenade launchers in the facility basement, there's a pineapple in hell waiting for you.
Yeah, I definitely was that kid. I was the GoldenEye troll. I know if any chance that Peter Drexel or Eric Markowski or Steve Burney or any of the guys listen to this, there were a few of us growing up who were very good at GoldenEye, and I was quite adept at that game. I did not have trouble putting my friends down in it or meeting strangers and taking them out. And for a long time, there was
What? There was no online content for this. I just imagine you like meeting up with shady people.
With like your
Yo, you bring the cart? Yeah, I got it here. This is Pierce Brosnan's face coming out of people's overcoats, plugging it in.
Actually, how I'm seeing this is that like a Michael Jackson gang shows up. And this is Leroy. He's going to be playing against you. You ready for it? Ow.
Yeah. No, but like it would be like that thing, like, oh, my cousin's great, you gotta play him. And so then like eventually that cousin would come by for some barbecue and you'd play him, and every time
everyone's shit talking each other the whole time.
Oh yeah, and every time I'd school these kids like over and over again. And the one kid who was like their holdout was another person who ended up being a good friend of mine, Brendan Morton. And he would come up all the time. He was older than me. He was my brother's age. This is 3 years older, 3 years older than me. And they would always bring this kid up. They'd be like, Brendan Morton's amazing. Like, oh man, if you played against him, that'd be our saving grace.
His name was Morton?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
And so they brought him by one day. We finally got to meet him. The first time I ever met him, and he was like, "Oh yeah, you're that kid who's good at GoldenEye." I was like, "Yeah, you're that guy who's good at GoldenEye." He was like, "We should play." And literally, we like took the system out, thinking everyone else was going to play, and everyone else just sat. And they were like, "No, guys, you go ahead, one-on-one." And I'm sorry, Brennan. I know you grew to be a big scary Marine, but you lost like a chump. You lost like 8 straight. It was like no shutting me down. And I remember it was heartbreaking for a few of my friends because I was that troll, right? I was the kid who would stop in the middle of the match and turn around and look at them, like ignoring what was happening on the screen and just be like, I'm going to win. It's going to happen. He's not going to. And then I'd turn around at the right moment and kill him. And I was such a dick. But God, that was good to have those skills. That was the beginning of me loving competitive gaming. Like
for me, that was Halo Combat Evolved because I would do the same thing. I remember, it was one of my first like great loves of game. I went there, and the first time I saw it was at my friend Steve's birthday party.
Oh God!
He got it with a giant fucking TV, and god damn, I played through the cartographer, which is a great mission, one of the best designed missions ever. But whatever. I remember taking a friend out. I had invited him to my house from school, and I beat him 50-3.
Jeez.
And I gave him 2 out of the 3.
That's rough. Yeah, man.
That was really mean. I was not a good, hospitable kid.
No, you weren't.
It was really
I
weird.
was not.
We were both very, very awful children.
Matt Sears had a particular way of pissing you off, and that's that he was so gregarious about being awesome.
He was the nicest person to beat you in a game ever.
He'd sit there
Terrible.
and he would
What a
just
fucking asshole.
cheap spam you. You know, if there was a way to be cheap with a character, he would master it before he'd opened the box. And you'd sit there, just smoke coming out of your ears. You were so mad, and you'd look down and he'd give you this winning smile and go, "Good game," and hold his hand out to shake your hand. And you just wanted to spit on him.
I just beat you using only the Chun-Li kick combo.
But to be fair, I never. Okay, real quick. talking about franchises, Fallout. I never played any of them. Still haven't played any of those games. I don't look at me like that, Brennan.
Good for you. Flat out. Bethesda, you make lovely games. None of them have been Fallout.
Wow. Okay.
Damn.
Maybe a
You are gonna
conversation
get
to have a little bit later, but
Yeah, that's going to end badly for me on the internet. I'm sorry if you love them, you're wrong. The only one that was
here's the
ever
thing.
good was New
I
Vegas.
had no idea what Fallout even the fuck was when Fallout 3 came out.
Yeah.
And he was playing it, and I went up and I was like, "Oh, what's this?" And he gave me like a 2-hour breakdown of this game, and like played through the beginning of it so I could see what's going on. He's like, "Yeah, you're in Washington D.C. and everything's fucked up," and I was like, "That's awesome."
Yeah.
One of the most knowledgeable people about that game and a lot of other games that I've ever talked to.
Yeah, I don't know. This was the weird thing about Counter-Strike when I started playing it, because this made me think of kids cheesing and being really good at games. I think that was why that became the tipping point for me, why that's the game I think of, and I guess Half-Life by extension is the game that tipped me from person who played video games to gamer.
Yeah.
Is because Counter-Strike was the first time you couldn't cheese. Like, the arena limited your options, and anything you could do that was wrong would eventually be bannable or removed from the game.
Mm-hmm.
And as it's been culled down to what it is today, that machine's just gotten more and more perfect. Putting aside all the cheating scandals and the rigged matches and everything that have been going on.
Tossing games.
Yeah, that's not Counter-Strike's problem.
That's a player. That's a problem between keyboard and chair.
Right. So, but that game was like perfect.
that.
And it was the first time that like you could exploit nothing. The only thing that separated you from everybody else was your skill. And eventually your coordination with other people who were good. And because it was like that online experience and the social was getting added to it, it just, oh God, that game just like sunk into me like a drug. And it carried me to so many other online games. I mean, I played a lot of competitive Counter-Strike. I played tons of shooters that came after that and things. But it's been that ride forever. Like even now into Destiny, my favorite thing about it's Crucible, obviously, because I've never gotten over that high of just the competitive multiplayer. Mm-hmm. And all of it goes back to those games like Halo. Like before that, I can't think of GoldenEye. Before that, I can't think of a game prior to that I remember playing to that kind of competitiveness.
It's because you like hunting the most wild, dangerous beast out there. Another human.
I like to hunt man. You can do that in Maine too. Probably in Millinocket.
Well, no. I think that there's something to be said about that, and it actually kind of brings me to a question that I wanted to bring up, or a topic I wanted to bring up is, what's the best co-op experience you've had with a game? That could be either working together or multiplayer, arcade, playing online with other people.
Best co-op experience in a game.
For me, it was being able to do, in the original Halo, being able to do the co-op on the single player. I loved that. I loved being able to play co-op. I mean, I still love playing co-op. We talked about this last time. I suck at PvP. I love playing it, but I'm terrible at it. With PvE content, I feel like in any game, I feel like it's a lot more fun. I like to work on a team with other people to beat it. And I don't think that there's anything better than, Mike, you're going to have to help me out with this. What is the last level in Halo 1?
The Maw?
The Maw on co-op, where it's a speed run.
Yeah.
I remember playing that
and
the Warthog. I remember playing that at your house, and that's just like, there's nothing better than beating that on Legendary. Like,
it's a crowning achievement.
It really is. It's hard as hell.
See, that's comparable to my moment, which once I thought of it has eclipsed everything else. The best co-op experience of my entire life is the first time I killed Lich King. Easily. Nothing compares to that kill.
Right?
Yeah, it was so hard to achieve.
Warcraft.
It was very, very short after they opened the last wings in ICC. And I wasn't competitively rating at that point, but we were very close to the progression. There wasn't a lot of guides on how to do it. And I remember, oh my God, getting the timing right and everything else. We'd been in there. We must have been 30 plus wipes into the fight.
Yeah.
And we just hit a zone where they had mastered it. And the adrenaline rush from that takedown when we finally got him, and the fact that it had been that just amazing story experience, that there was that laser focused, narrative driven expansion, and it was all these things that were so great that made WoW about that. Like that first takedown was just nuts. Yeah. Like that was like, just like fist pumping, like crazy moment.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing is that that's why I like co-op, whether it's multiplayer. I mean, that's PvE multiplayer content. I love that because it brings people together. I mean, there's something to be said about, quote unquote nerds who want to stay inside all day and not talk to people. But we do talk to each other and we play together, and I love the community that video games make.
Yeah, and I think obviously gaming is getting a completely inaccurate depiction if anybody still thinks it's antisocial in any way. I don't think it's been like that for years.
Yeah.
Actually, my best co-op experience ever was this over a sustained period of months, and it was when Borderlands 2 had come out. And my partner at the time and I got that game, and I just remember we would hang out on our bed, like after I got out of work, she got out of class, whatever, and we had the same two characters leveled, and we leveled the entire game together. I wouldn't even play that character unless she sat down with hers.
Yeah,
and it was gross.
That's great.
But it was absolutely amazing.
No, I think that's
we
awesome.
were so excited when we finally took down the final boss together, having started the game and ended the game together.
Yeah.
And then ordering pizza to celebrate.
That's good. The victory pizza. You need that.
Yeah, you need the victory pizza. James?
Oh. See, that's one of those things where it's actually no, I got it. So I took Taekwondo lessons for a number of years.
Whoa. Getting into the real world here.
But afterwards...
Sounds awful athletic.
So afterwards, we would get out on Fridays, and my buddy Shale and I, we would go across to the South Portland Teen Community Center. Mm-hmm. And so on Friday nights, it was just a place for young people to go and hang out. And we got a pretty heavy rivalry going on the N64. I think it was WrestleMania.
Oh, yeah.
That was a really good game.
It's a big game.
And there was something about sitting down and just cursing out these people and just feeling really close with them. I don't know what it was, because you're sitting there and it was a great way to meet new people and to actually feel like you had a social life. Because you did have I had a social life. And guess what? There were girls there. Cute girls. Whoa.
Yeah. I remember vividly the first time I ever went to a Friday Night Magic. That was like the mind-blowing experience for me. I showed up and I was ready to whomp. I had my like white weenie deck that I built, and God knows it was like Urza's Saga or something. It was terrible cards. And I had no idea what I was doing, but I was super excited to play Magic with like other people I'd never met. Like I was like, these strangers. How good could they be? It was like the real life Pokemon trainer battle.
Yeah.
And I remember I walked through the door and I was like all prepared to take on this like boiler room of sweaty nerd men, slay them all. And it was actually a Friday Night Magic organized through Plymouth State College, which was in Plymouth where I was in high school. And I walked through the door and I was the only guy there. It was like all these chicks in college, and then like I showed up. That would have been the intelligent reaction. I like walked through, it was like sudden terror. Like I was like, oh no, I'm not good around girls. I'm gonna be worse at cards around girls. This is gonna end badly.
Did it end badly?
Yeah, I got wrecked.
No,
Yeah.
That's a typical story.
That's another
for
cool
Magic, by the way.
That's another really cool thing about co-op experiences is that in Portland, Maine, we have a bar called Arcadia National Bar, which is a play on the national park Arcadia.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to tell them that they're already doing one thing on the internet. I don't want to overburden them. And this is a bar. They have all the classic systems. They have arcade machines. They have pinball. They host tabletop gaming. They have a Hearthstone league. And I think it's really cool that video gaming culture has come to this point where it's super profitable, not just for money, but for bringing people together to spend time together, and just is openly accepted. Whereas, we've never had to hide in a community.
Yeah.
Well, unless you play Dungeons and Dragons in the 80s.
One of those things that's interesting that you find about gamers is that if, they're a decent person at all, then you're engaging with a reasonably intelligent, fun-loving person.
Granted, not everyone's like that.
Not everyone's like that, but,
We've all been on
it's...
Xbox Live.
Jeez, man, stop being a noob.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. We moved to Canada.
Sorry.
But it's one of those things that I've found that being a reasonably intelligent young man and growing up like that, you you could very quickly ostracize yourself just by opening your mouth about something that interests you. Because, and a friend of mine actually told me recently, and this was some good catharsis and some good working through of some issues, but it was the whole fact that when you're a smart young kid, you intimidate people, and they don't know how to deal with that. And the thing is that when you're in gamer culture, you're dealing with intelligent people who, while being fun-loving, usually have a bit of a competitive streak. And so if you intimidate them in any way, there's usually this, well, let's see what this guy's all about. And the thing is you're able to go in and be in conflict with somebody. And I don't know, it seems to work this way with guys, that you get into a fight with somebody, and if it resolves anywhere near well, then you actually feel closer with this person afterwards.
Oh, yeah. Conflict resolution.
Yeah, I think that's something that, like, obviously any athlete or anybody else can relate to. Competition ends up bringing you closer to the people you compete with.
Yeah.
And, you generate that mutual respect for your opponent. Mm-hmm. Well, I would say that's most of our gaming roots. Obviously, we could keep going on this war a long time. But I'm really interested in what some of you guys' gaming roots are. So if you want to get at us on our YouTube, hit us up on Twitter, hit us up on our Facebook group.
The links are in the description below this video.
We would totally love to hear about your gaming roots, what you think is awesome, and please give us some feedback on our podcast. You want to flame at me, trolls, be trolls. We would love to get our first trolls. And if you want to leave us nice comments, that would be amazing too.
And I believe we're going to be trying to do a Twitch stream this Tuesday.
Yep.
The link is down below, but if you can't read that, it is twitch.tv/the LAN Party Talks.
Dun, dun, dun. All right, we're out.
Thank you.